ACNFers, this episode is brought to you by the word obstreperous. Obstreperous. Noisy, clamorous, or boisterous. When the 3 a.m. voice comes to tell you what a lousy person you are, it sounds obstreperous. ACNF for the CNF Pod, the creative nonfiction podcast show where I speak to badass people about telling true stories. I'm Brendan O'Mara. Wonderful. What can I say? Nicholas Dighiera is here, and he's a heavy dude. Not in the sense that his BMI is dangerously obese. I don't think it is. Okay, can I pause and say BMI is bullshit? I may be built like SpongeBob, but I'm not obese. But BMI has fat-shamed me into body dysmorphia, and I don't know who to blame. Nick had a great piece of flash nonfiction for shortreads.org titled Happy Birthday. It is one sentence long. It is 857 words long. There are many commas. You will not lose your breath. Nick is not afraid to run toward the pain, and you feel the pain. His mission is to make you feel less alone. He laughs at the idea of calling whatever it is he does a career, so don't use that word. Great chat about MFA programs, the one-sentence essay, telling the truth, and running towards the hurt. You can learn more about Nick at www.nicholasdighiera.com. Dighiera. Dighiera. As far as I can tell, he is not on social media. For that, I am jealous. And I am jealous of his beard. He has an epic beard. If you head over to BrendanO'Mara.com, you can read show notes to this episode and many others, and sign up for my Rage Against the Algorithm newsletter, a curated list, so basic, an essay, not so basic, books, stuff to make you happy. It goes up to 11, literally. The list is 11 items long. First of the month, no spam, can't beat it. Oh, and I started something cool for the Patreon crew, patreon.com/CNFpod if you want to throw a few bucks into the hat. As you know, the show is free, but it sure as hell ain't cheap. Any tier. I started like a thread, a simple one for starters. What are you working on? Encouraging the Patreon crew to talk amongst themselves. I jump in just to keep the momentum going, but I don't feel like I need to be there. I'm there to acknowledge, but I hope that the Patreon crew will talk amongst themselves. Like make it a hub for people to meet they normally wouldn't meet, and to maybe glean some insights from people they would not ordinarily glean insights from. There's no way to tag someone, but maybe you can write. I think you could just reply right below someone's comment, and you can have a conversation. Just thinking of other means to get your money's worth and feel less alone. I suppose I could create like a private Facebook group for it, but I doubt. I mean, I'm only on Facebook to find people I need to talk to, like for book research and stuff. Like I'm not on there to socialize, or that. So I just what I might be doing with the Patreon thing too. I might do a little video, and it'll just be like that'll be like the prompt to start the thread, and it'll just be things that you can kind of chew on and be like, oh, cool, and there's 27 Patreon folks of varying tiers. And that's a nice little cohort. I mean, of course, we'd love to see that be 2,700. Wouldn't that be cool? Then I could retire. Shout out to Athletic Brewing, the best damn non-alcoholic beer out there. Not a paid plug. I want to be clear about that. But I am a brand ambassador. I want to be clear about that. And I want to celebrate this amazing product. If you head over to, I almost said BrendanO'Mara.com, athleticbrewing.com, and use the promo code BrendanO20 at checkout, you get a nice little discount on your first order. I don't get any money, and they're not an official sponsor of the podcast. I just get points towards like t-shirts and beer. And I have enough points to get myself a case of beer. I just have to pay for shipping. It's just from other perks of being an ambassador. Not a single person has purchased anything with my referral links and my discount. I would love to see that change because I think it's a great option for you to have in your refrigerator. Here's a really nice chat with a writer I've come to really admire, Riff. I really enjoyed getting acquainted with your work.
Yeah, that other piece that you read, Captain America. I was supposed to do a reading for AWP in 2019 in Portland, and it had to be a particular size or whatever, and it went really well, and I submitted it to River Teeth after. When the creative nonfiction people signed River Teeth on as a, I don't know, supplier of work to them, they said, well, what do you got? And they sent them my piece first. And that's how the people at Short Reads found me. Was, I guess they've moved from the creative nonfiction, whatever email that was, to Short Reads. So they reached out and they're like, oh, do you have anything? And I had this piece that I had written. I tried I try to get in Taco Bell Quarterly. Are you familiar?
No.
Okay. So there's this guy, I think his name is M. Kerrigan, and he made this magazine called Taco Bell Quarterly. It is not associated with Taco Bell. It does not come out quarterly. Um, and all of the stories have to be associated with Taco Bell, which is, I tend to write more serious, to me, serious things. And I was like, oh, I got to try to get it. They're calling for more work. I'll try to write some piece. So I happened to be in Fruta waiting for my kid to get out of school, and I busted out that piece, and they didn't accept it at Taco Bell Quarterly, and so I think I worked it maybe for a magazine called Complete Sentence, but I think it was originally always one sentence, and then yeah, sent it off as soon as they reached out and asked for work at Short Reads.
When I was talking with Hattie and Steven for an episode of the show a few weeks ago, we were just talking about Flash essay as a form and everything, and Hattie was bringing up various things, like sometimes there might be, what maybe an essay can be one sentence. I'm like, all right, that's curious. I haven't seen that yet, and I think this one must have been in the chamber, and so it's one of those things where it could be, it's like Birdman in a way, where the way Birdman was filmed, that one take thing. It's like, okay, that's part of its style, its essence, and what you end up talking about. And so it can be a dangerous tool to deploy if it's not done well. So when you were approaching something like a long one sentence essay that can call attention to itself, what were some of the dangers that you were reckoning with as you were looking to use that as a stylistic choice for this essay?
Oh, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I made that choice, um, like intentionally before I set out. I wrote this piece called Kong a couple of years ago, and it came out in the Sun, and I got invited to go do this writing meeting with some people online. This was heavier COVID times. And I just remember they were so excited to ask me, like, well, what was your intention with this piece? I mean, if you want to call it intention, I had two. One was to sit down and write, as opposed to do anything else. And then the other was I needed to somehow write about Taco Bell. And that's it. My whole goal is to tell the truth, I guess. So that's an intention. If I'm going to write, then I want to tell the truth. I didn't set up to write one sentence. I do often write very long sentences. I don't know if they work or not from a technical or grammatical standpoint, but I guess
Mm-hmm.
like any art, if the reader deems that it's working, then whether or not it meets a strictly technical definition of work is irrelevant to me.
Yeah, because as I was reading it, and it became apparent to me that it was going to be, a oneer. I was like, all right, it's like my attention has been called to it, so it's just like, okay, let's see how it unfolds from here, because that can be, sometimes when you call too much attention to the style of or the vehicle of the thing, maybe the message can get lost, which wasn't the case for me. I found it a riveting essay that just had this unique one or component. So I guess maybe as you were rewriting it, what was your what were the gears churning like in your head as you're rewriting it? You're like, okay, this is going to be a one sentence thing, and I kind of like the sound of this right now.
I don't even think about it in those terms. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not. Yeah, I don't think about that. This I had another essay that River Teeth published, and a very good friend of mine and mentor, he read it and he said, I've been sitting here retyping a 502 word sentence that you wrote, and I don't know how you did it. I don't remember doing it. I didn't know that it was that long. So, my editing process, so the writing process is to try to get to the place that hurts. And then once I'm there, it's just like this fury of trying to witness it. Like I don't know that the words are right. I don't know what the right words are. I just know that I'm in the pocket, so I just need to write as much as possible before the pocket passes. And so on the revision, my goal is to clean it up to the degree that it makes sense. I am never engaged with the novelty of the vehicle. I'm more listening to the tune, like the syllabic measure,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how clean and easy to understand the material is. Like, I don't want to confuse anybody. I want it to be, I want to just be clean and compressed. Probably out of all of those, I'm the worst at compression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that image of being in the pocket, and I often just being just the uh, thick of skull that I lean on sport metaphor a lot, and so like I love the term in the pocket. I use that term for interviewing people, something even writing of just being in a the quarterback pocket, and it's all around you and it's surrounding you, and then you do have this moment where if you hold on to the ball too long, that shit's gonna collapse, and you got to get rid of the ball, or you got to be really prepared. That way you can see the field better, read the defense better, read your opponent better. Not that an interview is adversarial or one versus the other, but it's when a person goes one way, you're like, oh, I can see where we can take this. So I love that image of the pocket and being in it, and not wanting to vanquish the opportunity of being in that nice spot.
Oh, yeah. From an artistic standpoint, um, for me, it's been a lot of years to realize how to get to the place and how to stay in the place as long as possible because the feedback, well, there's twofold. The feedback that I get from myself is that I am the most satisfied with my writing when I can tell the truth from that place. It feels like real beauty, like the kind that is all of the emotions all at once. It's really good. I'm sure that you've been there before where you were writing and all of a sudden you just like fell into this river and it was like everything that's coming out of you right now is only good.
Sometimes not that you think of yourself in highfalutin terms, but sometimes you're going along and sometimes you give yourself goosebumps where you're like, it just, you're so in it and it feels so visceral. You're like, oh, wow, it elicited something in me that was hormonal in a way.
Yeah, like I remember Stephen King talking about. I mean, it was in a book where he was writing about himself, which is amazing as a fictional character. But how the story seemed to come from his belly button. I think as John Gardner writes about it, like this white hot heat. A lot of people, I think it's in Wonder Boys, the Katie Holmes character talks about how the Michael Douglas character, like all the words were just up in fiction heaven waiting for him to pick them and put them in exactly the right order. It feels like you you have some sort of antenna and you're on shortwave and you're just like writing is just dialing and you hope to get like pick up Mongolian throat singing from Ulaanbaatar and you're just praying that it comes that something that genuinely beautiful comes in. And when it's in, you're just like, your whole goal is to n- not fuck it up. It's like you don't know how long you're going to be there. And to hear it while it's not to try to think about where it's going to go afterward or what you could do with it or anything, but just to hear it, to be witness of it.
Have you found any way in your practice, in your writing practice, the way you show up, how frequently you show up, that you can increase the frequency by which you may be able to tap into those heavenly words out there in the ether?
I revisit events a lot, but I honestly think that revisiting those events a lot, those events are traumatic and there's trauma there. But I think it's an easy place to begin to understand beauty because there's so much trauma and the trauma feels so much. There's so much that comes with it. It's like I bought it, I didn't buy a coffee today, but I bought a coffee today has little to no feels to it, right? But like my brother got run over by a car when I was 15 years old, has an ocean liner of feels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's first learning how to feel, I guess. I don't want to sound pretentious. I don't know what I'm doing, man.
None of us do,
I
Nick.
sit down, I sit down and I try really hard to break my own heart every time I write. I don't know why. It's like somehow if I write it all down, then it'll go away. But that's not true either because it doesn't go away. All I know how to do is like do what works for me, which is sit down and try to write something that actually like matters to me, to tell the truth, not stylize it or not make it like obviously all nonfiction. I'm not going to say that. Most nonfiction is just fiction anyway because it's my version of the story, and everybody is a completely different witness to both their story and anyone else's. So I'm writing a form of fiction as witnessed by myself
Mm.
and felt by myself. So I guess if I've learned anything over the last like decade or so of writing, it is that the more that I do it doesn't mean that I'm getting better at it. And by do it, I mean writing. But also, it's like playing the instrument. The more that I practice, not every day of practicing produces quality material, but the more that I practice, the more prepared I am to play the song when it comes.
Right. It's like I remember taking guitar lessons very, very briefly before I gave it up because I don't have any grit, and it. But I remembered after one session, be it playing by myself or after just plinking along with the teacher, that day's lesson was total garbage. Like it was so bad. But the next day when I started, it was like in my sleep that muscle memory was doing its thing and my neurons were starting to thread together. And so that next day it was a little bit better. And I think that's true with writing too, because sometimes when we're in that, be it if we're in the pocket or somewhere outside getting crushed, it's we weather that the buzzing of the fretboard and the out of tune stringing, but by the time we get to the next one, those neural networks have fired and we're a little bit better the next day, and it's kind of my long-winded way of just echoing exactly what you said.
Yeah, it's also, um, I find it's like learning to appreciate being a witness. I feel like if you can practice writing all day long, but if you can't see anything, if you can't feel how the world looks in a way that is unique to you, it's unique to everyone. Everyone looks at something completely differently. So in your real life, if you're not practicing trying to feel all the feels, and not that everybody does a bad. God, I don't want to sound pretentious. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I think there's an element of what you're saying, which is you've developed a way to run towards the pain where a lot of writers sometimes don't because they're afraid to. And how have you learned or cultivated a sense of like, well, that's where I need to go. That place of hurt that you mentioned a moment ago. It's not a lot of people can get there, and I wonder how you've. Not that you're comfortable with it, because I don't think anyone gets comfortable with it, but you found a way to run towards it and really convey it well, at least from what I've read.
Yeah, so that's two parts, right? The running towards it as a thing, and then the second part is the practice at the instrument. And if you practice long enough, you can play your instrument well, which helps better serve the first thing. Not saying I've practiced long enough or that I do the first thing well. I don't know. I don't know, but it just feels like telling the truth is important. And maybe it's because I think it's so hard to tell the truth in real life, or you don't always know the truth. You don't have time to develop the truth because when you're communicating with someone else, there's like you and the other person, and that's two people. And then there's the third person that you make, which is the person between you. It's like the idea of the conversation or the relationship or the interaction, and it's separate of the both of you. And it doesn't genuinely, most of the time, achieve what either individual wants because it has its own agenda, but the paper has no agenda. The paper is not going to shame you for writing what really happened to you or what you did. The paper will never interrupt you or tell you to stop. The paper will accept every horrible thing that you've ever done, will always be there for you. I used to I used to joke with this friend of mine who I have to go to his funeral this week, which is going to be something. Um, but we had a joke between he and I and another friend about how alcohol never says no. Like it. Everybody in your life will tell you no, but alcohol never says no, which is the truth and also extremely terrible. But the paper is like that. If I try to have a conversation about some of the things that I write about in real life, my voice will continue to increase and register until it's so tight in my throat that I can't talk anymore. And I have things that I want to say, but I can't say. And there's usually another person, and then the other person has things they interject with or whatever. And so, but like the paper, I can, my throat can fail to work and I can continue with my fingers and my mind, and I can explore a space that cannot be explored through normal human communication. And so maybe for me, part of what you're talking about and the reason I've gotten good at it is because I have things that I need to say. Not that my things are any more or less important than anyone else's. My experience is, equal as everyone else's. But as I'm trying to say those things, it doesn't really work well in real life. So I found an alternative reality where I can say whatever I feel I need.
So,
Maybe.
how did you develop the let's say the compulsion to want to share it and write it? That's a uniquely different thing for writers, right? It's and you could just tell a therapist or keep it to ourselves. But some of us turn to writing essays to metabolize it. And maybe for you, well, how did you develop, as I said a moment ago, the compulsion to do it?
Early on, like just post high school, I kind of fell into like deep reading, kind of going from, I used to read a lot of pulp fiction novels from like the 30s, like Doc Savage and The Shadow and stuff like that. And then I moved into kind of heavier stuff and I realized there was a difference, but I didn't understand the difference. And it took, 10 years or so. And then of reading off and on, and I started falling into, Pulitzer Prize winning or Pulitzer Prize winning books and Nobel Prize winning authors and short stories. And I think it was really when I got into Raymond Carver, I thought, these stories make me feel less alone in the world. I've always, not always, but as I have grown, I have developed more a sense of aloneness, even amongst others. And and particularly really great short stories made me feel less alone. And I think the very beginning attempts to write came from a position of wanting to put that energy back into the well that I was taking out of. Like if I could make one person feel less alone for 5 minutes, then I know what that's like, and it's worth everything. And that mentor I was talking about earlier, he said I have this gift where I will tell the paper absolutely anything, and then I will be able to go back and edit it and not recognize what I told the paper. And then I will go out and submit it to the world and forget what I told the paper. There's a complete disconnect from what I told the paper to when it gets published somewhere. And then it
Hmm.
gets published somewhere, and then people will reach out and they'll say, "Oh, that was really great," or "Oh, this or that." Like I've lost friends over things that have been in things that I've published, and I forget. I'll have forgotten what I said. Um, so it's not ideal, or it can be not ideal when it involves other people.
What are some of the things that you return to and read and reread for that sense of uh, unloneliness, to feel less alone, and maybe even the things that turn the world from like black and white into color for you that made you want to contribute to the well?
Oh man, hold on. Well, in the terms of like nonfiction, have you ever read Poe Ballantyne's essays?
Poe Bound? I have not.
Oh man, there's a book called 501 Minutes to Christ, and there's another one called Things I Like About America. I highly recommend that you wrap your eyes on those. They are so um, beautifully heartbreaking. God, they're unbelievably good. He's kind of a wanderer, and he just takes like the bus all around America, and he lives this really like, or he used to, he doesn't anymore. But man, he just has so much to say about being alone, and these great. Oh man, there's such good stories. There's one about meth that breaks my heart every time. It's really good. Sorry, I was able to find my list here. Just stories and like short stories. Not whole collections, but short stories. I think my favorite is Fireworks by was that Richard Ford? Oh, because the end of that story is unbelievable. And I really like if you've ever read Prophet of Jupiter by Tony Early. That's that's so good. Um, God, I just read one the other day. Uh, A History of Everything, Including You by Jenny Hollowell. It's so short and it fits everything in it, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, I
God, which one
love
is this?
tight economical yeah, writing passages, short novels, short stories that just it's a heavy fastball, and I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wish I could get that same kind of hit from poetry. Uh, there's one out there called, I think it's called Reverse Suicide. Can't remember the guy's last name. Maybe it's Rasmussen. I can't remember it right now, but that one, got to go back to that one like once or twice a year. It's so good. But
What could you? Oh yeah.
I'm always looking for like, and I only read probably one or two stories a year that are that good. There's one in the New Yorker by Lauren Groff, I think last year. Can't remember the name of that one. Annunciation, and then Stay Down and Take It by Ben Marcus was in the New Yorker, I think in 2018 or 2019. That story, I I'm a sucker for a love story, and that one is all the love.
What could you point to as as you were getting your writing career kind of go going? Yeah, we all need early wins, early victories that put a little fuel in our tank to make us to feed the delusion to keep going. And what could you point to as an early win for you that set you on this course?
I don't have a I don't have a writing career.
Good.
Yeah. I yeah, I get maybe a few things published.
Yep.
I wouldn't even see every year. I only write, some years I get 5 essays out, some years I get one. Little things like this I can turn out really quickly, but it's whether or not they're good enough to publish. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a writing career. Why do I keep trying? Is the
Yeah.
better
Yeah. Why do
question.
you keep trying?
Um, because I believe I can do it.
Yep.
Yeah. And not every time, and not that everything will be good, but I believe I can do it. Yeah, the only person now that I write to like impress is that one mentor guy. Like, these stories go out in the world and you hear so many rejections. I have an incredible spreadsheet that I keep all my metrics in. I think I'm like 667 submissions in, I don't know, less than 10 years. My acceptance rate's like 3.5%, which is very, very small.
And probably normal.
And
Like people need to know that kind of batting average. Because I think anywhere, if you're in that ballpark, I would say that's probably normal. Not that I keep 100%, and I'm more in sometimes more in the journalism kind of world where it's probably more like 10% if you're good. I'm way under 10%. I'm in the minor leagues, but it's one of those things where, yeah, it's like talking about those percentages to get to your point about making people feel less alone. People need to know that the rejection rate is cataclysmically high, and it's okay, and it's normal.
yeah, when magazines are like, "Hey, man, you should be really excited you got in because we have less than a 1% acceptance rate,"
Yeah.
you're like, you're like, yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, you get that beat down enough, it's like, it starts to become funny. Like, I got a rejection letter
Right.
once that the guy was like, "Hey, we're not going to take this." So normally I have them in my mind. I have them tiered out. Tier one is form rejection, like no flavor. Tier two is a form rejection with encouragement, where they say, "Hey, yeah, we're not going to take it, but please send us more work." And tier three is like, there's a note for you. Hey, we really liked this character in this scene, or whatever. And I got, I don't know, tier zero, where this guy said, "Hey, we're not going to accept this essay, and also, as long as I am editor of this magazine, we will not accept any essays from this collection." And I was like, "That is brutal. Thanks, buddy." um, but it starts to become funny, and then you realize that no one cares. No one cares about what you do. You sit down at the computer and you bang your heart out and you try to tell the truth, and no one really cares. But if I send that essay to a guy in Lincoln City, Oregon, he will send back a response and he will tell me that I did it again or that I'm beautiful for a minute. And that really matters to me. And so it's weird when it goes out into the world and like I don't know, I had some piece. I have a project. I don't know if I want to mention it, but a piece of it got, I don't know, went on Facebook, and then there was like 5,000 people that read it or more, and everybody said nice things, and that was too much to bear. Um, because I don't write it for all that. I kind of just wrote that one for me, and then it was really great that the other guy, the mentor dude, read it. Beyond all that, it's like, I don't know why I keep doing this. I got asked that the other day. Does it make my life better? Does it make me feel better? And I think happiness is pretty fleeting. It doesn't make me happy, but it feels like satisfying. Like I can be okay for a little bit.
Yeah. Would you say that writing in a way, and writing, running towards the pain and writing through the hurt is something that is it saves your life?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Um, I don't know how many suicide letters you've written in your time, but when and that's a very serious subject. I take it very seriously. By the time I reached the end of the letter, I always realize how much gratitude I have that I get to do any of this at all, and that if I
Right.
do, if I can survive till tomorrow, then it's one more day of bearing witness to something that is really difficult to like witness and fully take in. Like life is brutal, and and I have it, comparatively easy. There are many people that are worse off than I am for sure. So yeah, I have nothing but gratitude for being here, and I forget sometimes. And I think writing, if you're doing it correctly, even though I write a lot of at least my own personal dark shit, I hope that I can find the beauty in it and remember that all of this is worth doing as long as I can possibly do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking when you're like, rhetorically, you're like, yeah, how many suicide notes have you written? I've riffed on that idea in my journals all the time, just from my own just bleak outlook on things. Like I always come back like to how good I have it. It's some faulty wiring. But for you, sometimes does it take writing a suicide note to make you realize, like, oh, it's maybe not as bad as I had originally thought?
It doesn't, no, it doesn't take that. I don't do those anymore, kind of. I write to the, I write to the New Yorker. I write a letter to the editor every week. They never read them. You could say whatever you want. And some days I write, how bad it is here, um, feelings wise. Obviously, I mean, I feel bad because I know, like so many other people have it so much worse, and you just feel like your pain matters, and then you're like, wow, people are in objectively far more pain than I am, seem to be doing better. So yeah, I don't write. I haven't written one of those in years, and I've only written a handful. Yeah, I don't need as much effort these days to understand that every day here is a gift, and I try to remind myself of that a lot.
Uh, but yeah, as I was saying that, I was just I imagine that maybe writing through a lot of the stuff that you write about, it probably does have a cathartic effect on you, and you're like, it it evokes something in you, but having that, having it evoke something in a reader is like, oh, okay, the writing I'm doing is of service, and and that feels good too.
Yeah, that story. I don't remember when I shifted. I wrote a lot about my divorce, about this trips that I had with my children, a bunch of essays about that when they were real little, and we went from Fruta to Alaska. And the people that read that, they seemed to enjoy it, but I think it changed really with that other story that you read, the Captain America one. When I first started writing about my dad, and I wrote another essay, like I said, Kong, and that went into the Sun, and that got a lot of readership. The day that they posted that online, I think I got 22 emails from random people, and the overwhelming response was, "You gave me my father back." So whether
Mm.
their father was dead, or in many of the cases they had just stopped talking to their father, that story made them pick up the phone, and they got their dad back. And that to me is like, even if it's just one person that never emailed me, like I can't get my dad back. But maybe if it's
Yeah.
just one person out there that got their dad back and they never had to tell me about it, that would have been enough for such to have such an impact. Is there's a sense of like I don't want to know, don't say thank you to me, like you did it. You picked up the phone. I always believe anyway that writing and reading, that is when you're reading somebody's work, it's a 50% or more contribution. My job as a writer is to take a nebulous idea, there are no words to it, a feeling. And the feeling I shoot for, I hope, is beauty, or, whatever the collective unconscious can be defined as. And to package that down into, in the case of what you're talking to me about, a single sentence, and then hope that the person on the other end, using the bare minimum, right? 26 characters to a handful of punctuation, you know, black on white, if that's what colors you read it in, and that they can unpack a gateway into all of us all at once. So much of it is like on the reader's part. So I'm like, don't thank me, man. You did it on your own. Like, you transcended the plane. It's the most amazing art form to me. And so, yeah, I was really happy when anybody reaches out. Some lady just emailed last week. She read a story about my brother, and yeah, they tell you that it's beautiful, and it's like, you know, I'm sure some part of me wants to be beautiful or see myself as beautiful. I know that I don't most of the time. So it's nice when people think that the things that I do are.
Yeah, and to take that pain and that trauma and to make art from it that moves someone to reach out to you, or even better, that they pick up the phone and reach out to someone that you no longer can reach out to. It's it's gotta. I mean, it's kind of bittersweet because you can't pick up that phone in that instance for either your brother or your father, but you've you've lit that flame for someone else to do something. Maybe they've gone years without talking to someone, like they realize they can't get that time back, but at least they might have tomorrow. And so you've kind of, I don't know, you kick that door open for them, but they had to walk through.
Yeah, but that's awesome, because I think, as far as I know, everyone's going to die. Unless, Christianity and Elijah, I think he went to heaven on a chariot while he was still alive, but I might be wrong there. But nope. I just read this quote the other day because we've been talking a lot about my friend, all of our friends. Something along the lines of, death, death is often by error, and it is also inevitable. For anybody to reach out to anybody else for any reason and say, hey, I really appreciate that you're here, or whatever, that's far more like, I don't think you get over the death of people that are really close to you, that you love, that are your family or whomever, maybe that. I always think about this. My aunt, for one reason or another, decided she was going to walk into traffic on the I-5, and somebody hit her and she didn't die. And I tend to think about that person who was in the car. They were going from A to B, doing something completely different, and they were unwittingly pulled into a different plot line for a minute. And so the interaction can be that quick that, you have this event that you're not going to get over. It's just something that you carry with you, like a scar, or, a tumor or something like that, that doesn't go away. It's just what you have now. But yeah, being able to affect the shape of someone's scar, someone who, if you can still try to repair that relationship. I had a friend who talked about fiction was all about connection and disconnection. That's it. That is the entirety of all storytelling, is connection and disconnection. And there's probably other things that it's about, but I think so much of real life is about connection and disconnection. And if anything anyone could do to reduce disconnection, seems like, as long as nobody's hurt, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and we live in such lonely and isolated times now. I think of the incredible graphic memoir, if you want to call it that, on loneliness that Kristen Radke wrote a couple years ago, and it's just so moving and touching. But then you, like, some people, if they seek that connection and like online chat rooms that just devolve into neo-Nazism. It's like, well, that's connection, but that's not good. It's like it's we need connection, but not all connection is created equal.
Yeah, and it's funny because you sense such a desperation for connection that
Yeah.
settling for that is more acceptable because you'll take anything. There's a craving seeming, I don't know, I can't speak for authority on humanity, but it does seem like people are really short of connection. Yet we have more ways to connect to each other than we've ever had. I wish people read more. I mean,
Yeah, no
it
shit.
feels
Yeah.
like it feels like I'm participating in an art form that's dying, and I can't speak for my work, but I can look to other work that I've read in my art form and say, like, here are the fucking answers. Like, it's all here. You don't need to go look somewhere else. Like, it's here. And it just seems like people don't have the time, or want to make the time, or want to have feelings that are not like the feelings they already had. Like they're looking for validation, not for more complexity.
At least in the limited sample size of what I read from you, it's I think there's a great emotional reflection going on, like in reading it. Like I could feel a certain energy, a certain pulse that resonate with me as a reader. And the more you put that kind of work out there, the more opportunity it has to hit someone who might share it with someone, or just randomly hit someone who needs to see it. And it might turn a switch on. It might get them engaged in a different way. They might find connection in a different way. And it's you can't control that once it's out of your hands. But I in reading your work, it's like I think your gift and your talent and what you've been able to put out is they are they're bridges for the taking, if I can go so far as to say that.
I mean, one can hope. It's really messy on this end, and I try to
Yeah.
clean it up. But then when I send it out into the world, uh, it can become far more messy, because people bring their own mess.
Oh
The
yeah.
hope is that the overwhelming response is positivity. There's always going to be somebody that's upset, and that's got to be okay. I'm sensitive to that, but like also you can't think about that when you're writing anything because you wouldn't write anything. My hope is that there are more people than 22 that got their dad again, or
Oh yeah. No, I
just
would certainly say
anything.
yeah. Oh yeah, and it's and just in terms of and reading what I've read, and it's got such a strong voice component to it, and I almost was like, it sounds like you avoided the MFA trap, and then I noticed that you did earn an MFA uh, from Anchorage, Alaska, and and I say MFA trap, I earned one myself. Uh, I think I met great people. But I think it did something to my written voice that it took me several years to break. And I wonder for it looks like you managed your voice seems to have come out of it strong. Did you wrestle with a certain MFA uniformity that you were able to break through?
I think realizing why you're there, I got really lucky. One, the program that I got into was magical. They weren't trying to produce uniformity. I don't think any of them are, but this one really, it made a space for me in my existing voice, which was less refined, but I think it was still there. But the other thing was, before I attended the program, I just completed my bachelor's in weirdly business. And there was a woman there, shout out Carol Lund. She's amazing. And she said, you need to not write about business anymore. You cannot anthropomorphize stocks. You can't make narratives up for quantitative research. Like this, you're doing something that is great. It's just not here where it belongs. She's recommended that I go to the MFA program, and I said, I don't want them to tell me how to write. And she told me about her brother who was a painter, and he was a gifted painter. He painted his whole life, and she kept trying to get him to go get educated in painting, and he kept refusing because he didn't want them to change. And he had this revelation when he got there that your goal when you do that isn't to learn how to write, it's to learn how writing works and then pick the tools that help you get your vision where you want it to go. It's not there to teach you how to write like everyone else. You can hear everything they have to say. Your job is to pick your instructors and pick the tools and pick the things that you can learn from there that help your vision get closer to where you think it needs to go or where it wants to go as its own thing, which I think listening to the story is the most valuable thing you can do. Get you out of it and just start listening to the story. And so
Yeah.
I actually, the first year, I got coupled up with this dude, and he was the best. And he threw me all of this really good fiction I'd never heard of. And he never said no, man. I could send him the wildest shit and crazy shit. And I sent him 3 times the amount of work I was supposed to produce in a year. And it was great. It was a huge time of experimentation. And through that, I think I learned that my voice, as it was, mattered. I just needed to stop doing some other things from a craft perspective to get out of my own way.
Well, Nick, as we're kind of coming up on our hour, and I like to, ask a recommendation of some kind for guests as we bring this airliner down for a landing. So, as we come up on our time here, I wonder what you might recommend for people out there. That's something that's bringing you some excitement and joy that you want to share.
Yeah, I think back to those Poe Ballantine references. Like, I can't emphasize enough in the nonfiction essay world. I don't think there's much like him. 501 Minutes to Christ and Things I Like About America. Um, every aspect of those books are amazing. They're even printed really tall and narrow. And like he says at the beginning of 501 Minutes to Christ, which is a number, it's not spelled out, that he put a number on it because he didn't know where librarians would file it. Like the whole thing just says, get the fuck away from me. Like I'm doing something different here, which makes me love it even more. And then if you haven't read Festival Days by Joanne Beard, get it in your house. It's the best collection of essays if you want to call them that or whatever. I mean, she has this. Have you read that yet?
I have not.
It's got this like beginning essay that talks about fiction and nonfiction and what the difference is between the two. And that book is absolutely magical. Yeah. There's an essay written in first person perspective from a woman who utilized Jack Kevorkian's services. How do you do that? Like,
Jeez.
yeah, and it's incredible because that woman's not here to do that anymore, to write that thing. But she worked with her family and she got permission and she wrote this thing, and it really challenges what we think of as nonfiction or nonfiction essays. And yeah, Festival Days by Joanne Beard.
Fantastic. Well, man, thank you so much for hopping on the show here and talking a little shop and doing so on such short notice as well. So just thanks for the work you've been putting out there, Nick, and thanks for coming on the show. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for reaching out and talking to me and whatnot. I appreciate it a lot.
Nick came on the show very short notice. Pretty much bailed me out this week, so we had a new episode. So thanks for that. It's getting harder and harder for me to put these new shows out every week, and I might have to start running encore episodes from the backlog. Thanks to a chat I had with a buddy today, he suggested that as I get increasingly overwhelmed by the book, that it might be best to step away from the grind of new interviews and refresh the backlog with new introductions. It's full of great evergreen interviews. But who's scrolling all the way back? It's so much. And no matter what you say, they feel old. How often do you go to the backlog and podcast backlog? It might be like 2018 or 17. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, it was like 5-6 years ago. That's old. The audio might be really crappy. So anyway, ones that are really good, I'll start drumming up my favorite ones. And You know, that way you can be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize Laura Hillenbrand was back there, or Mary Carr. That happened. That was a long time ago. Oh, you mean David Grand was on more than just this last time? He was on episode 99, not just episode 3, whatever. I originally had something of a longer parting shot. I deleted it. It was bleak, even by my standards. So I'm just going to go. I'm not going to drag you down anymore. Best of luck with what you're doing, and we'll catch you next week. Sound like a plan? All right. Well, if you can't do interview, see ya.